songs in the mouths of these poor damned birds, dumb with hunger, moved by thirst. Oh, so much depends on you. And the bread, a flip will bring us. A red wheel on the jet black DeVille, parked beside the two white chickens, twerking outside. A glaze of rainwater, a sentence without end. Thank you. By Esteban Ismail. My name is Catherine Dett, and as the director of the Writers Institute, I get to thank some of the people involved in bringing about the Seavey Reading series. First, I extend our gratitude to President Jonathan Green and First Lady Lynn Buck for their loyal support, and to our Dean Pat Long, and to Silas Zobel and Betsy Verhoeven for being the co-chairs of our department. Thank you to our many donors, especially Rick and Sue Seavey, whose generous gifts make tonight possible. Thanks to Professor John Foltz in Communications, Tara Mackey in the bookstore, the people of IT and Events Management and Marcom, and to the Blauweiss Library for hosting our second book club event on Sunday evenings. If you don't know about this yet, we're having book club events on Sundays before each of our readers come. So if you want to come to the book club just to hear about the book that you're about to hear more from, it's student run. It's really fun. I went to the last one, so that's going to start back up again in February. So thank you, Blauweiss Library. Thank you to my colleagues who support the reading series in so many ways. Tonight I'm especially grateful to Matt Null, who coordinated everything before he left for sabbatical. And our visiting professors of Borba Bradshaw-Mittal and Sean Ironman for teaching all of the books in the series. Maybe not all the books, but teaching many of the books in the series. Thank you as always to our program coordinator, Tony Zitta, and our wonderful students. So book club coordinator, Lexi Kaufman, Seavey Reading Series Assistant, Caitlin Worsbicki, Paige Kataila, responsible for filming and putting this event on YouTube, Bree Luby and Logan McCormick for managing social media, and our literary arts interns Jen Martin, Ayla Kerwan, and Arabella McClendon, who are here to support us tonight, and they'll be selling books if anybody wants to buy one by our author to sign after the reading back in the box office. Now I get to say a few words about Grace Stowe Evans, who will introduce our guest tonight. Coming to us from the neighboring burg to the north, Lewisburg, Grace is a creative writing major and a religious studies minor. Her passion and dedication to writing started either before or when she was in high school, as evidenced by her participation in the Iowa Young Writers Studio and in our own Summer Writers Workshop 2 years running, where she studied with both Matt Null and Silas Zobel. While pursuing her undergraduate degree, she's been working toward her goals with fierce determination. Grace has served as the fiction editor for Rivercraft, and she's won the Janet Wise Writers Institute Scholarship for her outstanding creative writing. Her short stories have appeared in our campus magazines, Rivercraft and Sanctuary, and she has also published work in many off-campus publications, including About Place, Mudroom, and Creation, where her fiction was chosen for a Pushcart nomination. And a few days ago, she received an acceptance from Shortline Review for another work that's forthcoming. I'm proud to call Grace Stowe Evans up to the stage to introduce tonight's featured author.
Akil Kumarasamy is the author of Meet Us by the Roaring Sea and the linked short story collection House Frauds. She is an assistant professor at Rutgers University Newark in the MFA program and a 2024-25 fellow of the Harvard Rutgers Institute. I found Akil Kumarasamy's debut novel in my hometown Barnes & Noble, oblivious to the fact she'd be visiting my campus in a few months. I was intrigued to read from a writer courageous enough to imagine the near future as I found my own thoughts shrinking away from the topic of fits and anxiety. Meet Us by the Roaring Sea depicts a mild dystopia a few degrees removed from our own, in which automated vehicles decide who gets to survive a crash and inscrutable AI models gorge themselves on data. Kumarasamy rejects bombastic visions of apocalypse in favor of the mundane loneliness of a human life apart from the world, but vulnerable to it. Kumarasamy's writing is an exercise in contradiction, which holds the reader at a distance whilst interrogating the means by which we can forge meaningful connections. Whilst reading, I found myself staring into space, considering the panes of glass that stand between myself and the world. In an interview with the LA Review of Books, Kumarasamy stated, "Personally, it's important to try to push the boundaries of fiction, of what we think it's capable of doing." Kumarasamy's bold formative choices and insightful reflections push readers to develop a deeper understanding of consciousness, of compassion, and of the place of art in a changing world. She disrupts male-centered discourses with reflections on Tamil history, poetry, and philosophy. This innovative and necessary novel has been shortlisted for the Ursula K. Guin Award and the Lambda Literary Award. Kumarasamy's short fiction has also received numerous accolades, including the Guin Prize. I'd like to thank Kumarasamy, whose innovative prose and profound insights have reassured me in my conviction that the well of art and innovation within the human spirit will never run dry.
Thank you so much, Grace. That was so lovely. It's been so wonderful being here. I just want to thank also Captain for taking me around campus on this cold winter, I guess like almost winter day, and also Matt and all for the invite, and also Tony for doing all the administrative work, and yeah, thank you for making my stay here such an ease. So I'm going to read segments of Lead Us by the Roaring Sea. So the book takes place in the near future. There's a female AI coder, and she just lost her mother. And she's working on a strange AI project and also translating a text from Tamil. So the book alternates between this future world and then this manuscript from the 1990s. And the outside's written in the second person, and also the manuscript's in the first person plural. So I'll probably end up switching from the second person to the first person plural. But I wrote this book the book came out August 2022. And it was right before ChatGPT, but then there's a language model that has ChatGPT-like qualities to it, so I wasn't predicting the future, but maybe a little bit. I was on a panel once after the book came out, and the questions were generated by ChatGPT, so that was really interesting. They even summarized this book, and it wasn't this book, but maybe it was like a future book that I should write. So that was quite, responding to AI in that way. All right. So I'm going to read a section where in the future world, there's a self-driving car accident. Rosalind looks it up, the accident. The first article refers to it as the trolley, aka self-driving car problem. On a detour, a self-driving car meets another self-driving car in what seems to be an inevitable fatal accident. In one car, 58-year-old Mr. Ahmed, with early hearing loss and a heart murmur, and Mrs. Ahmed, 51 and diabetic. In the other, 34-year-old Mrs. Lockwood and her 3-year-old toddler. The manufacturer Solintel said the cars exchanged data and attempted to make the best decision. Medical histories and demographic information were included: Pakistani, Muslim, heart condition, diabetic, Caucasian, Christian, baby eczema, and so on. The company involuntarily confessed these details through a leak. In the past year, there have been a number of accidents with similar results, and the CEO of Solintel responded that race, age, wealth, and religion had in no way impacted the decision-making process of the cars. These were tragedies, simple as that. The comments at the end of the page go on. Baby plus mom, greater than 2 old people. What's the problem? Our cars work just like how our drones work, with minimal casualties. Would a non-white baby have lived? AI is God. Rosalind closes her eyes like she's overloaded, but then she begins whispering. I remember them, Mr. and Mrs. Ahmed, and that girl Sal down the street, who you used to hang out with when you were a kid. She made those weird collages with like hair strands and nail clippings. Rosalind looks at you momentarily, satisfied at her memory retrieval capabilities. But then the news sinks into her and she's wiping her eyes, saying it's the saddest thing she's heard. And you're not sure why she's getting sentimental about people she's seen only twice in her whole life, but she's staring at you, waiting for your face to respond. And you remember the time many years ago when you visited her family out in that lonely stretch of Pennsylvania, and the four of you went out to dinner, and outside the restaurant she spotted a mangy three-legged dog that was clearly abandoned, and she wanted to help it. But no one would listen, and throughout dinner she kept talking about this ashy dog that no one cared about, and her food went cold, and she refused to eat, and later you heard the sad rumbling of her stomach as she slept, and you could still sometimes hear it if you listen closely. Now I'm going to jump across. So the main character, she works in this kind of like AI company. And now she has a new project that seems a bit frightening. She's not too sure what it's capable of, and she's trying to navigate it. Whenever you have a new project at work, you name it. Usually the name comes quite naturally. You'll hear a word in passing, or while reading the news, something will catch your attention. It's a ritual you started from your first day and provides, you think, a physical anchoring to an assignment. Today you scan a story about a man living on a houseboat on the Hudson, in preparation for the city turning into Atlantis. For your lunch hour, you slip off your shoes, sit cross-legged in your chair, and eat a spicy eggplant sandwich. You're in a partial state of meditation, closing your eyes, chewing, and waiting for the perfect word to drop in. From the emptiness, a voice asks, "Do you mind if I join you?" It's Ricky, his hand already pulling over a chair. He brought with him a greasy slice of pizza he must have picked up outside the building. "I can't seem to prepare myself for the future," he says, and takes a bite. His skin is slightly pale and erased because he doesn't look well. You momentarily forget yourself, the self-consciousness you normally would have felt by the intrusion. You hand over a commiseration chocolate, a gift from one of your coworkers, and he eats it right away, telling you it has a raw floral undertones, like bee vomit. Nearby, you sense Brianna watching the two of you, tucking away this information for safekeeping. She once mentioned the bareness of Ricky's desk, no pictures or extraneous things, and then his overt disregard for his colleagues, the failure to engage in normal human chatter like, "Hello, how are you? Your hair is wet. Did it rain? The weather is unpredictable. Let's talk about what's outside of us because we can't talk about what's inside." She shook her head. "I wouldn't trust him. He's not planning to stick around long." Ricky tells you about his past gigs. He trained a specialized AI program at a research hospital to analyze images from medical scans to identify malignant cells. It wasn't so hard to mislead humans. A slight alteration of an image led to dramatically different results. The real difference between machine error and human error, he says, is that no one gets in trouble when AI makes a mistake. The image of Mr. and Mrs. Ahmed blinks in your mind, and you resume eating your sandwich. The vegetables taste charred and rubbery. Lately, you've heard more jokes about the meaning of AI. Appearing intelligent, artfully idiotic, archangel incarnate, usually followed by a tentative knowing gasp of laughter, as if renaming something made it more manageable. How else to survive the great invisible forces pulling everyone closer into this claw of convenience and efficiency. You pause and stare at your half-eaten sandwich. Ricky touches your arm, maybe sensing your thoughts. He points at the news article you pulled up and tells you he wouldn't mind living on Atlantis because he likes swimming. You shake your head and tell him you were looking for a name. And this must intrigue him because he nods like he understands. And you go on to explain the new assignment without giving too many details except calling it strange and alarming. He leans back, thrumming his fingers against his chin as you wait in anticipation. Ah, he says, and pauses for suspense. How about bogey? Bogey? Like the boogeyman. I think every culture has a variation of that childhood monster. You test the word out loud, and it morphs on your tongue into booger, sounding somewhat childish, disgusting, and cute. It has a ring to it, you say, and he nods, summoning the creature with 3 incantations. Boogie, boogie, boogie. The name doesn't change anything, but somehow it makes you feel better. I'm going to jump to another section about AI. Intelligence is not consciousness. Once upon a time, there lived an AI that was trained to compete on a trivia game. It was fed dictionaries, novels, Bibles, anything humanly essential. And it regurgitated so well without understanding that it was given the top prize as the most intelligent being in the world. Bogey would easily eat up that AI. Today, you run a sentiment analysis in a test environment. From the results, it can identify happiness and sadness with a high probability of success. But then, when you test for words and images associated with danger, you discover it has marked an infant with a high threat level, along with several countries. Throughout the day, Bogey makes the same choices, and you're tired, and Bogey is still hungry and bad. In truth, there is no clean data. Everything on this planet is rotting. Alright, I'm going to just jump to another section. Before she joined the AI company, she had a job when she was at university, so I thought it might be apt to read that. At college, you worked at a suicide prevention center. It looked pretty bleak, with linoleum floors and fluorescent light that jaundiced your skin. On your team, there was grumpy, dopey, bashful, sleepy, and happy. The names didn't fit. You were nicknamed Sleepy because you mostly did night shifts and slept in the day. Your face didn't show it, and you sustained yourself with frequent naps during the week. The building was old, from the early 2000s. A labyrinth of cubicles that let everyone squirrel away. The conversations were recorded, and the phones were outdated, so you didn't have an option to video call. Some people would request to see a friendly face before they died. Mostly the callers were lonely. One graduate student hadn't spoken to a single living human for over a month, and she was suspicious that you were an automated robot. Prove you're human, she said. And you recited poetry, told her about your day and coursework. That can all be programmed, she said. Show me that you're really human. It was your first week, and you wanted to transfer her to someone else, but you needed this job and didn't want to seem inept. Probably because of your nerves, you just started hiccuping and apologizing. I'm sorry. And when the line went silent, you murmured, please be alive still, dispensing an emotional entreaty which went against protocol. But then from the pits of a whale's belly, she emerged. Thank you. You weren't too sure if all the expulsions and stammering of your body made you any more human. She hung up, and you hoped that was not the end for her. There were no follow-ups. Your old coworker, the fifth dwarf, Happy, was fired after working at the center for 2 years. They They deactivated his ID and didn't even let him collect his belongings. Everything was shipped to him. In an afternoon conference, the oversight board, which consisted of a woman in her 80s with a hearing aid and a fresh graduate with an eye patch, played the recordings referred to as the love chats. Over the course of a week of mandatory retraining, you listened to the 10-hour conversation between your coworker, Happy, and the young man, caller number 347, he was falling in love with. Caller number 347, or David, said he planned to die that night. He had tidied his things and called his mother, but she didn't respond, so she thought he would call her here before he ended it all. His words were careful and slow, like he was standing on the ledge of his voice. Happy stayed calm throughout the first half hour. He asked David about himself and the people in his life. Then somewhere around the 45-minute marker, there was a shift. David described an incident when he was 8. He had tried to drown himself by sticking his head into a toilet bowl. And in the middle of the story, Happy's voice cracked as he said, "Oh no, you poor thing." And he began laughing. And David said he was supposed to save him and not ridicule him. "Why do you keep thinking you're shit, sweetie?" Happy asked. And David returned the question, "Why do you keep listening to this shit?" Then they kept repeating shit to each other like it was the loveliest word. Happy was known for using endearments that might be deemed overly affectionate. It was his style, but even Happy knew he could stray only so far from protocol. Around 87 minutes in, he snapped out of it. Remembered he was in his cubicle, and David was teetering over some black hole. "Can I call you tomorrow?" David asked, and Happy said, "Yes, please." That was how it started. He called at the same time, and Happy made sure he was at the phone. It went on like that for over a week until the oversight board stepped in. David's number kept coming up in the logbook. A frequent caller was always tagged. The pair of administrators paused the recording in certain sections to make sure everyone understood the breach in protocol. "Your voice was in my dreams last night. Were you trying to make it shut up? It helped me sleep. I bored you that much? Not in the least." Mr. Eyepatch stopped the recording and wrote on the board, "Flirting," and then crossed it out. "Think of how many people who weren't helped because of this," he said. "You need to be aware." It was like that for the rest of the retraining. As much as you wanted to block the administrators out, you wondered if they possessed a keener sense beyond hearing or sight that you couldn't access. Even Happy didn't seem to know he was in love when they dismissed him. And it almost felt unethical to dissect feelings that someone didn't realize they possessed. Maybe nothing would have come of those feelings. You always knew the conversations were recorded and no longer belonged to you, and maybe that was true for everything, all your actions, words, purchases. The day after Happy was fired, David called and asked to talk to Happy. When they said Happy no longer worked at the center, David asked for a personal phone number, which they refused to give him. He hung up, never called back. You wonder if, after all this, he felt like dying out of love. Can it jump again? So I'm going to jump to the inner manuscript, to this main character who's the female AI coder. She's also translating a manuscript from Tamil, and she's kind of translating it out of grief. Her mother just died, and she feels almost as if translating this manuscript allows her to resurrect these women who no longer exist, and it kind of grounds her in a way, in a kind of unusual way, to the present. And there's a question throughout the book I was trying to wrestle with, and the question is like, what does compassion look like? What does it mean to care about somebody else? And what's the edge state of compassion? Is there a space where compassion turns into like destruction, into delirium? So these women, in this manuscript, there's a group of 18-year-old female medical students, and they're living through a drought and at the edge of a war. So they're trying to navigate a new way of existing and being in this time and space, and they're wondering what's on the other side of compassion. So I'm just going to read a section. Yeah, so in this section, the government has decided to help people during this drought. Instead of giving them food, they decided, like, let's give everyone a television. Because it's the elections coming up, and we want votes. So everyone's getting a free television. As relief during the drought, the government gave out color televisions to the poor, the star-hungry, anyone who wanted to plug in for nourishment. It was a campaign gesture by the newly elected chief minister, nicknamed the Artist, who had spent years in the film industry before taking up politics. She was called a visionary for wanting to bring technology to everyone, even those in far-off villages hidden by sugarcane and water buffalo. It was Pavitra who made the suggestion about the televisions. Quiet, with her hair cut right below her ears, she looked like the young boy her father had always wanted. None of us had ever questioned the senior girls. In our hunger, they gave their meals to us, and we ate and watched them, craving to know the fullness in their faces. When Pavitra raised her voice as we sat in the common area, she sounded far away, as if she were cupping her mouth, trying to reach us through the distance. How can we be vulnerable to the world if we have not seen it? She said, and we felt a sudden yearning for everything childhood had denied us. From the beginning, Abhayar was against it, but Basima and Leela saw the television as perhaps only instruments for amusement, a way to make Madame Sarojini pay with her electricity bill. Or perhaps the older girls were curious themselves, secretly drawn to these idle comforts. There was an extravagance in our smiles as we measured the empty space in each of our rooms. How many televisions can we fit in St. Mary's Hostel? On election day, standing in lines that coiled through alleys, we waited under the thrill of the sun, the heat pressing against us, and the tide of laughter, delirious and seductive, pushing us forward. The mandate was one television per family. Because our families lived in villages and cities hours away, we each became the last of our tribes, sole inhabitants, altogether 63 distinct clans with 63 identical televisions in a single building with only one spare generator. We hid them in plain sight, with only a towel or an old shawl draped over their square shapes. The distinct fear of discovery kept us staring at a blank screen, brand new but still coated with a fine dust, our faces dull and somber in the reflection. In the quiet of our rooms, they stood as solid shrines, containers of unseen meaning. Who would know what would arise from that void? Surely the older girls anticipated only an artificial exchange, an amusing short-lived diversion for the senses. How could they have known we would find the fixed borders of our egos and liberation all at once? Consumed with our own suffering, we would follow a path of fire that would lead us to that secret hatch door we had longed for all these years. On our Saturday evening, hours before curfew, we heard the buzzing of hundreds of indecipherable voices spreading from the halls of the fourth-year students. And before long, the whole building chattered in a low hum. Maybe it was only a matter of a minute before the power was cut or the circuit blew, but in our dark rooms, we sensed within us a deeper, irrevocable pleasure stirring under the surface. We heard stories of families sitting cross-legged only an arm's span away from the screen. Empty-bellied, they savored each image, not blinking once in case they missed an advertisement for detox soap or fairness cream, the sweet smiling lady waving at them to buy Shivani biscuits that they could not afford. Facing the bright square window to another life, they could fall asleep, full of their desire. Because we did not want to raise suspicion, we arranged a schedule with 22-minute intervals where we could each watch separately from our own television. All over town, televisions blazed 24 hours a day, but we hungered for our own specific allotment, the sacred portion carved out especially for us, where we could lie half naked in our rooms and memorize those oversweet, overacted lines, or chronicle the news stories according to their distance from us. Some evenings we blindfolded each other, reenacting an old episode or news event, forgetting where and who we were. Sometimes we were men, and we slapped our partners or tugged at their clothes suggestively to reveal soft bodies, or we were the young Muslim teenagers shot by the police, and unlike their actual quiet, unknowing deaths, we died elaborately, arms waving, necks arched to the heavens, as we swore and cursed officials. Throughout the day or night, there was always at least a single television on. And this way we felt nothing was missed, that someone had kept watch while we were away, as if collectively we were 63 pieces of the same being. Aveir was the only one who refused to collect a television. She said it would make us suffer more, and we didn't believe her. It was simply a projection of images, we assured her, naming the function of the machine in our most clinical voices. Child's play, really. Nothing more than shadow puppets prancing around the lantern. What then is reality, she asked, and left us to our thoughts as she headed to the library. She had named herself after the ancient Tamil poetess, most likely to avoid any allusion to her family's wealth or high caste. Her father was the owner of a popular brand of textiles, his surname often projected on billboards and on the television, especially in the late afternoon. The name Aveir connoted no caste, no age, and no singularity. In all of the images of the poetess, she was depicted as an old woman, gray-haired with a walking stick. We were to forget she was young, drinking kalu with a curse between her lips. Young women were not allowed to be wise. Our Aveir was slender, her hair never plaited, dressed all in white, a virgin widow who never married. She carried the burden of multiple lives, remembering the past with a clarity that belied her age. In the library, almost all the books were in English except for the two ancient Tamil palm leaf manuscripts, preserved in the glass shelf, the etchings faded, nearly indecipherable. From Aveir, we knew how the British burned the palm leaf manuscripts to warm their horses, how the brigade of General Von Gones lit their tobacco with them. Our own ancestors let the manuscripts rot in dark places, mashed the literature into pulp. Aveir spoke to us mostly in pure Tamil, and we wondered every so often if she was only playing a character, having lost all sense of self. She was open to becoming anyone, like Dhiren Chinnamalai, who fought the British so valiantly that the generals wanted to spare his life if he would prostrate himself and serve the British crown. But he refused, and so hung hanged from the gallows. We didn't remember the local kings, but we could tell you stories of Babur and Akbar, the Mughal emperors we read about year after year in our textbooks, though they never ruled our state. Remember, she'd tell us, British soldiers, this color moon wax, first landed on our southern coastline. Valiant death awaited us too. Besides history, we were forgetting the origins of our words. Aveir reminded us, pulled apart the collage of images. The middle of the words meant dictionary. Letting go of the hand was give up. Distant scene was television. We tried to remember it was only a distant scene as we shared with one another what we had watched at all hours of the day. 10 car crashes on Monday, 2 floods in South America on Tuesday, the oldest man in the world passed away on Wednesday. On Thursday, Aboriginal land in Australia was retaken. Friday, a heat wave killed 6 people in Portugal. On Saturday, the peregrine falcon was officially removed from the endangered species list. Sunday, 5 trekkers died attempting to climb Mount Everest. We wished we could see each other with the clarity of a television serial, the story already written. And like faithful devotees, we followed the characters through betrayal, love, revenge, knowing them in ways they could not conceive. We were like fruit flies, worried over them, sucking at the invisible pollen of their being. During quiet moments of their private heartbreak, we were sobbing, rubbing our eyes over some untrue event. The electric current ran across towns, cities, countries, buzzing with a kinetic energy we wanted to harness. The television was an unblinking blind eye, an ever-changing box of images, and we controlled it. The channel and the volume buttons fit neatly in the space of our fingertips, and we felt then so keenly the minute, potent forces of our own will and its indecision. With only a single bulb in our rooms, the televisions brightened our space, washing us with light in the middle of the evening. The images on the screen carried a vitality, an almost translucent glow. When we saw the image of a chair, Somehow an actual chair looked plain, dulled by reality, lifeless. Of course, none of us expected to speak to our furniture, but we were aware of a slight shift in our bearings. Even after we turned off the television, our eyes kept returning to the blank screen, wondering what we were missing, as if our everyday lives had become more muted. Thank you so much, everyone.